Shalom, Dr. Kelly. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing great. Yourself?
Yes, sir. We're doing wonderful, man. We are back for part 2, Doc. I've got so many people that have reached out regarding part 1, and they were blown away. A lot of people did not know what we are really up against, how our kids, how our young women are being seduced, how our families are being seduced by tradition. These things are plagued us, and we're dealing with wicked spirits in high places. And we are definitely glad to have you back. And let's get back to part 2. I'm definitely going to relinquish the stand and let you go at it and bring it. We're going to share your screen. You know, listen, everybody, please show some love to Dr. Kelly and go ahead and you can donate to Dr. Kelly on Cash App. And it's right here listed above. We want you to be a support to the ministry. Go to the YouTube channel, We Woke Now, and like, comment, and subscribe on everything that he's doing. Is We Woke Now. We turn it over to Dr. Kelly, and I'm gonna put it on full screen, Doc.
Before you do that, can you put us on his put you and I up on the split screen real quick? I just want to show something to the people, just to the point that you made about the investment in these books. These books are not cheap, like you pointed out. I spent a lot of money, spending money that my wife had no clue until afterwards. I mean, you would have thought that we were like a major business because of how constantly I have UPS or one of these delivery groups come and dropping packages off. But I just want to just show something here. Let me see here. This is an example of some of the books that I have. So this is not just me. Let me put it right side up. This is, you can see that this is in one of many references or sources that I have. This is Encyclopedia of Freemasonry. And again, I encourage those not to mess around with this stuff, especially if you're not grounded in the word itself. But I'm just showing you here, these are not new books here. You could just look at it and see they don't even make books like these anymore.
That's quality.
You're going to spend a ton of money for these books right here. And the people that wrote these books are, from 33rd, 32nd and 33rd degree Masons, Shriners. But you can see this right here.
Yes, sir. And let me say this again to y'all again. Do not go and purchase this information. This is why we bring on people that are rooted and grounded in the Ruach, and that the Most High has ordained for this. We don't want you running ahead and getting messed up and trying to grab information, trying to decipher stuff, because listen, words have power. Words have power, and you have to understand, if you're not grounded, don't pick this information up. We don't even want grounded people picking up. Yah has ordained people. He has ordained mores that are rooted in him and grounded him, that cannot be shaken, and that bring this information. So don't go out and get this information. We don't need you doing that. All right, Dr. Kelly, I had to say that, because we got people that are run with, I got to go get that. No, you don't have to go get that. Listen, pay attention, sit down, be still. Some of y'all are new jacks, and some of y'all knowing, and some of y'all that have been in this, and you're still not grounded in prayer, and the Ruach is not strong in you. And you don't need to go get this information and be swayed and be like, that might be Yah. No, that's not Yah. Nothing in these books is Yah. Everything in these books are the enemy. He's as an angel of light. So you need to know that. So pay attention and listen to what the Ruach is saying. Hold your horses. Hold your mules. Sit your butt down and be quiet and listen. You mores, don't try to run out here. You know you ain't full of the Ruach. Don't go out and get this info, because you'll be switching up your ministry. It'll come in and persuade your mind. It'll lean you to somewhere else that Yah has not got you going. Go ahead. I have to say that.
And I appreciate you, Ak, for reiterating that. And that's why I just want to reiterate that as well, that don't go out purchasing these books. Some of this stuff it can get on you if you're not careful. And even some of the stuff that I've researched, I had to put down for a little bit, because you don't want this stuff to stick on you. You don't want this stuff to start having a subtle influence on certain things of what you may, how can I put it, approach certain things. So even for myself, I take pauses when I'm dealing with certain things and reading and researching certain things. But But I really appreciate it. Really appreciate it. But
That's
yeah, I'm ready
wisdom.
to go. Yeah,
that's wisdom, y'all. I turn it in your hands.
I appreciate it, Ak. Appreciate it, Ak. And you could go ahead and maximize the screen, and we're just going to pick up where we left off at. And again, I want to encourage everyone to take notes because I'm going to share a lot of information tonight. The objective for tonight is to touch on some of the top sorority fraternities and sororities. Want to share even more of the influence of the Jewish community that's among the, of course, the Freemasons. I covered that in part one, but also in this fraternities and sororities, and just touch on a few other things. And so what I want to start off here is for those that are maybe watching this for the first time, you may be babes, and for those that may still be inside Christianity, still inside the church, and you just don't know these things, or you could be a young person and really don't know the influence of Judaism, even within the hip hop culture, Hinduism, and some of these other things that are within the hip hop culture. What many truly don't know is that many of the owners and of these record labels and these distribution companies are from the Jewish community. You know, when you start looking at Rick Rubin and all these different guys, many of these guys are Jews. You know, so
Yes,
and some of the artist development comes from those guys, and we see a lot of these things introduced. So just a couple of things that I just wanted to share as we show and as I reveal to you the importance of some key words I'm going to share after this here. So here's the influence of Judaism on the hip hop culture, because we know that Freemasonry is heavily saturated with Judaism, the Kabbalah, right? So here we see Judaism on the hip hop culture. Matter of fact, you see the influence on it in the Kemet community, the Nation of Islam, all those that are part of Freemasons and also have part of these fraternities and sororities. Guess what? You have Judaism. Judaism has a back door to your household, have a back door to your spirit. So nevertheless, the influence of Judaism on the hip hop culture. Just some kind of like some trivia stuff here that you can kind of make those that are watching, you can make a note here. This is coming from the Jewish Almanac, 1980. Let me say that again. This is coming from the Jewish Almanac, 1980. And as you see here, this is what it says about the word ghetto, right? Because we hear that a lot in our community, the ghetto, and we promote it. You know, we take pride in it, almost like a badge of honor.
Yes,
but
we
notice
do.
here, it says ghetto, Yiddish. That word ghetto is a Yiddish word from the Italian diminutive for borghetto. In other words, a little borough, right? Notice when you deal with New York, you have the what? 5 boroughs. That tells you that's a hint to who has an influence over that community.
Wow.
Right? So you see here, ghetto, Yiddish, from the Italian diminutive for borghetto. In other words, a little borough. As early as 1611, the word meant the place where the whole fraternity of Jews dwell together.
Wow.
Notice what they say here. The place where the whole what? Fraternity of Jews dwell together. And again, this is the Jewish Almanac, 1980, page 392. This is not my words. This is coming directly from what they would deem other rabbinical literature.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Another word I want to highlight, and this is Hinduism, the word diva. Where did this word come from? Well, let me show you, because these are 2 key words that are in the hip hop community or culture, the R&B, because they're still they brothers and sisters of each other. You hear ghetto. Now we're going to see what diva comes from. Lady God Diva. The name Lady God Diva is simply a combination of 3 different ways of saying goddess. And as you see here, as mother, Gada or Goda or Gerd. She is the same as Freya, consort of Godan, in other words, Wotan, father of gods, in other words, as you see in the parentheses, Goths. The old Teutonic, and I'm not getting into all of that, but you get the gist of it, of what this means. Let me give you a little more on it. It says, was a universal. Remember last week, I think I touched a little bit on this.
Yes, sir.
And I can do this in the future. Explain more of what universe means. Uni is the triple goddess from the Etruscans. This is where you get the Trinity, right? The triple goddess, right? The Capitoline triad, the three witches. Verse, right? The doctrine. Uni, the doctrines of unity. So universe means the doctrines of uni. So that word universe is what? Interchangeable with the word Catholic, generic.
And let me interject real quick, Doc, because we see a lot of people talking about, we see this trend right now that I've been seeing that I keep shooting down. Everybody talking about, oh, the universe don't kick back. The universe this. Speak to the universe. Speak to the universe. Speak, declaring the universe. I'm like, no, that ain't the Most High.
Well, see, that's mysticism, right? And so that's when you get into this new age. And if you want, maybe, let me know how the schedule is, and maybe we can schedule something about dealing with that, right? Okay. See, universal, that is a new age term, but really that term universe is basically the worship of the triple goddess uni, right? You had this word Trinity that's not just something that Tertullian introduced to Christianity. He got that idea because he grew up in paganism, right? And so you see all these different groups out here, like the Romans, the Greeks, the Etruscans, and the Egyptians, the Sumerians, all of them, the Babylonians, all of them have a Trinity. They all have a triple goddess or Godhead. See, notice certain terms I'm using that if we're not careful, we could be taking in a doctrine that we really don't understand. Words have meaning. So when you say universal, you get into universalism and all these different things. But what does universe mean? So notice what it says here. It says, was a universal Indo-European. When you see Indo-European, that's basically like me saying, similar to me saying primitive root. So Indo-European, you'll see this, for example, in languages, Proto-Indo-European or Proto-Indo-Germanic. So Proto-Indo-European, that can be used interchangeably with Japheth. So a universal Indo-European word for goddess derived from Sanskrit, Devi. And if you understand, language is another area that you can actually use as a blueprint to basically understand who descends from who. What many don't know and understand, Sanskrit is actually a Proto-Indo-European language. And many may not even be aware that Indians coming from India to this country, and many Arabs and so forth, when they get here, they can register as Caucasians.
Wow.
So Sanskrit, Devi, then it goes on to say tantric scriptures still speak of a mother of creation and a holy female river. So this is giving you more information on the origins of diva. This is Sanskrit, right? So we know that we see most women refer to themselves as what? A diva, and really don't understand what they are saying. Here's another word that comes from Hinduism: thug. The influence of Hinduism on the culture of, by way of this word thug. So the women, divas, the thugs, here it is. And now listen, pay attention to the behavior here. Words have meaning. And guess what? What you see here, you're going to see the same behaviors that's being exhibited by those that call themselves the thugs. This will make you think about Biggie and Tupac. Thugs, the curious ritual murder cult of Thuggee flourished in central India for some for some 3 centuries until the advent of railroads decreased foot travel in the 1800s, so that the depredation of thuggy, in other words, highwaymen, declined. But notice what this says. Thugs were fanatical worshipers of the goddess Kali. Remember, Beyonce had a video out where she had Kali spelled with an E at the end, but it's still pronounced Kali, and she was doing the Kali dance of death, which is a sexual ritual. So thugs were fanatical worshipers of the goddess Kali, having developed the idea that killing men in her name would win them a privileged reincarnation. They preyed on her enemies, the Brahmins. Women had nothing to fear from the thugs. Their victims were only men. So think about what we see in the behaviors of those that portray or call themselves thugs.
Yes, sir.
Kill our own brothers and sisters. Well, primarily our own brothers, trying to what? Impress this diva. So just want to give some just give some key words to kind of set up what I'm getting ready to go into it. Right. So how is this possible? Right. It starts with understanding media. This is another thing I want to highlight. These are some key words that I'm touching on just to set up when we get into the fraternities and sororities. So the Oxford definition of media, this is what it means. It says the main means of mass communication, such as broadcasting, publishing, the internet, regarded collectively. So let me read it again. Media, the main means of mass communication, and it gives you the example of broadcasting, publishing, the internet, regarded collectively. But notice in the entry number 2, it says plural form of medium. So when we go to medium, the intervening substance through which impressions are conveyed to the senses, or a force acts on objects at a distance. Right? When you start trying to use alternative paths, right, to get to a place of holiness, now you're getting into medium, right? You get into media, which is the plurality of medium, right? So when we see this practice, we see it at the very beginning with Adam and Eve in chapter 3, when Hasatan said, and you will be as Elohim. And others will say Elohim, but nevertheless saying what? You now have an alternative path. That's what medium path, the intervening substance through which impressions are conveyed to the senses, or a force on objects at a distance. And this gives an example here. Radio communication needs no physical medium between the two stations. In other words, a physical path, because now it's dealing with what? Radio waves. So what's the difference between media and medium? None, right? So media and medium, right, are tools used for spell casting, right? Because the internet is a form of media. Social media, notice what I said. Social media is a form of what? A medium, because again, there's a lot of spell casting that is done on the internet. Started with how people set up their profiles. Right? Not going to go into geek mode of that, but here's just some samples of spell casting. Right? This is an article from New York Post about the Vegas shooter. Right? Notice what they say here. Reportedly prescribed anti-anxiety meds over the summer of October 4th, 2017. But notice how they describe him. He shot and injured hundreds of people. But notice what they didn't call him a killer. They didn't call him label him as a in the top here. They made it clear that he was on anti-anxiety meds that causes behavior to go where it went. So it says mass murderer Stephen Paddock was prescribed anti-anxiety medication this past summer. So notice that they put an excuse on that. Here's another article, right? Still dealing with him, same type of theme. And this is coming from the Christian broadcast news. This is a Christian outlet, a media outlet, and they're doing the same thing. Las Vegas shooter case volume, other drugs raise red flags. And they're saying the same thing here. I'm not going to get into all of this, but they're giving you a narrative of this is why he did what he did. But media approach our people different. Our people who are victims are, according to the media, will paint us as if we are the criminals, as if we are the perpetrators, right? But notice what it says here. Psychiatrist Peter Breggin, author of Medication Madness, the role of psychiatric drugs in cases of violence, suicide, crime, is of a growing number of health professionals who say these drugs in some people can cause such severe personality changes that they can trigger the rage and even insanity, right? Now, this is the last article I want to share here just to kind of give you an idea of how media does things. And this is a great source. August 14th, 2017, Huffington Post, when media treats white suspects in the killers better than the black victims, right? This is what it says, right? Just giving us a couple of bullets here. Alabama suspect brilliant, but social misfit. Notice what it says. White suspect, Alabama suspect brilliant, but social misfit. That's how the Lubbock Avalanche Journal, chose to present the story of Amy Bishop, a former college professor who eventually pleaded guilty to killing 3 colleagues and wounding 3 others. But here's another article. This is a victim. Montgomery's latest homicide victim had history of narcotics abuse, tangles with the law. But this is someone that was a victim, right, of being murdered by a police officer, Caucasian police officer. But notice they make the victim into the criminal. It makes the criminal into the victim. Another example here. White suspect, son of Staten Island, murders, it says here, was brilliant, athletic, but his demons were the death of parents. This is how Staten Island's Advance covered the case of Eric Bellucci, a mentally ill New York man who allegedly killed his parents. So notice they pointing at, doing the correlations to mental issues. But here it is. Trayvon Martin was suspended 3 times from school. See, media makes a world of a difference. And this is NBC News ran this headline, demonizing a victim to try to plant that seed of justified hostility of a wannabe police officer. Last example. Notice what you see. The theater shooting suspect was brilliant, was a brilliant science student. But look at how Michael Brown was listed. Michael Brown struggled with officers before shooting, which we know that wasn't true. So who controls the media? Right? That's another discussion in itself. We know that primarily it's the Jewish community. We know that the Jewish community has influence on so many different things. All right. So I said all of that to set up this portion of it, the Delta Sigma Theta sorority. And here it is. This is one of the pictures that I like to use here. Look at her hand, right? Now she's forming what is called the Yanni, but she also is forming a pyramid, right? Remember we talked about the hexagram, right? She's forming a female reproductive organ. In the Kabbalah, the Shekinah or the Shekinah, right? And notice what it says here. National president. We believe in a spiritual life, but we leave to the individual the selection of the, notice what it says here, medium, in other words, path, right? Path, or whatever they want to use, physical path, but simply path for its outward manifestation. And notice at the bottom, the source, Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, Grand Chapter, Ritual 1990. This is from their book, their Ritual Handbook, page 30. These are some of the images that I mentioned, right? The Ouija board, many people who don't know that the Ouija board was actually called the Egyptian luck board. William Folk
Wow.
is a Jew. He created this, right? You got the tarot cards, right? You got the palm reading. All of this, these are mediums, right? Actually, the worship of the so-called pineal gland. That is a medium, right? That is a medium, allowing your body to become a medium, a portal for demonic stuff. Right here we have the 8-ball, the magic ball. You see that Ouija board dial? That dial is basically a medium, or a form of media, which is come from medium, to be able to what? Tap into what? A spiritual realm, a demonic spiritual realm. This is now when we're getting into the word Babel, which means gateway. It means portal, but it also means confusion by mixing. And so many of our ancestors have mixed into things that they should not have indulged in. And now we see the behaviors are still taking place today. This is what it says in their doctrine, right? Going back into the same, another reference here, Delta Sigma Authority, Theta sorority, Incorporated Grand Chapter Membership Intake Program. It says that is why Minerva.
This is the membership intake program.
That's
They're
right.
giving this to the members when you come in.
That's right. That is why. And sometimes they can be so caught up because many of them are young, not paying attention to what's going on, and parents didn't prepare them. So a lot of this stuff just go over their heads. Going to college, a lot of stuff that was thrown at me in orientation and all that went over my head, because when you're young, you just caught up in what you want to see. But this is in their intake program. This is even in their song. That is why Minerva, the goddess of wisdom, is our what? Sorority mentor. Wow, remember when I showed you Minerva and the three foundations when I was dealing with the Illuminati, and Minerva was one of them?
Yes.
Right? But this is someone that walked away. And what's sad about her is that our community began to attack her. When I say our community, I'm not just talking about those that are awake. I'm talking about our community as a whole, right? Those that are in this truth and outside this truth began to harass her because she walked away from her sorority. This is an article, and it says here, I am denouncing my membership with Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. When I first joined, I was so blinded by my desires to be part of the organization and didn't focus on the Most High's will. She goes on to say, also, if the organization is founded on Christian principles, why did the founders think that it's okay to place Minerva, the Roman goddess, on the shield that I wore across my heart? So that shield, her shield, is placed over your heart, making sure that you are reminded that you are using your life as a pledge, collateral. This is Minerva, right? Roman goddess of wisdom, and the moon derived from the Etruscan goddess Minara. Remember when I talked about the Etruscan? This is what? Dealing with the Trinity. See, the Trinity is not monopolized by the Roman Catholics. The Trinity is a pagan doctrine. That was what's his name? Tertullian saw what they would call a concept, an idea, right? When he saw the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit, he saw that and brought that idea to the text and start pushing this Trinitarian doctrine, Trinitias. So we see that you'll see a lot of these gods and goddesses are interchangeable with the Romans and the Greeks. We can take it a step further when we start dealing with the Vikings. But it says Roman goddess of wisdom, and the moon derived from the Etruscan goddess Minara or Minerva, probably a crone aspect. Crone, that's getting into the hag. Crone aspect of the original Capitoline triad. In the Capitoline triad, where you see crone, that is normally what is also called the hag, which is the old woman that's in the statues of the triple goddess. I'm not sure if you ever saw it. You have one that's considered the damsel, that's the virgin, and in the middle you have the which is called the mother. Her hand is over her womb, and then you see the last person, which is the old hag, right? They call it the hag, or they call it the crone, which is what? An old lady, an older lady, right?
Wow.
This is all part of what is called the Capitoline Triad, also Trinity, also the uni. They all, it's interchangeable. You cannot get away from it. So it says a Latinized Athene. Her totem was was the same as Athene, Lilith, because this is where what we talked about earlier. A lot of our brothers and sisters, when they hear like, oh, here's a lost book of Adam, that is not a lost book. That is not a book of the antiquities. What many don't understand, there was a lot of false books that was written during that time. Just because it's old doesn't mean that it's right, it's truth, it's accurate. But here, Lilith, and I can give you the whole story about Lilith.
I don't know that.
When you understand Lilith, when you hear about Lilith, that whole story of Adam, that is a Jewish fable. They created that story in like the 13th century about Lilith, what they would do when they was going through our Dabar HaKodesh, our holy word. If there's certain things that they don't know or understand, they created a story behind it. So the Capitoline Triad, Lilith actually really is an owl. You'll see her in Isaiah, not as Adam's wife, like they teach that, oh, Adam had two wives. That is getting into what? Fables. Yes. Anything that contradicts the first 5 books of Moses, leave it alone. Regardless of what many will try to say it is. But notice It says here, Lilith, and it goes on to say, and the Welsh goddess Blodwed, an owl. This is where you start getting into the cartoon. What is that? The Ice Witch, you know what I mean? If you start paying attention to the Huntsman Part 2, you'll see these images there, which consequently became known as the bird of wisdom and of witches. This is the Capitoline Triad I mentioned. You see the virgin or the damsel, the mother, notice where her hand is over the womb, and this is the hag or the crone, right? The triple goddess, right? Remember this scene right at the Grammys years ago when Beyonce was pregnant? I remember when I made a note of this because I was like, wait a minute, they are in a position of these guys right here. It's reverse. The damsel, the mother, she's pregnant, and her mother, who is what? The crone.
Wow, witches.
And notice what they have around. She have around her neck. The uni.
Wow.
The Yanni,
witches.
The Omega symbol. And notice what she has here. This is what the Catholic Church, the Pope has. You see, this is no coincidence, guys. The symbols are all in front of us, but sometimes we get caught up in the entertainment and don't pay attention to the ramifications that they are programming your mind. Remember that from the Huntsman? The owl Blodwed. Right? The most direct line of descent from Greek societies to America is the Freemasons, called Masons. Historians of American fraternities and sororities trace most of our rituals, ceremony, and rites to the Masons. And this is coming again from their source here, the candidate syllabus, page 1990, page 30. They're making it clear that most of their rights come from the Freemasons. An examination of Masonic rituals open to scholars suggests that our founders were also influenced by Masonic rituals, symbolism, and initiation experiences. Going back to this article, the hymn sound, in other words, they have a hymn. And they call it spirituals, religious, and they say here, the hymn sounds like a religious spiritual song. However, Jesus is the light and our guidance. We praise him, not delta. And when you understand delta, that is the triangle. That's the Greek letter triangle, the triangle symbol that you see there, which is what? A yoni, which is what? A woman reproductive organ. But it goes on to say, or Minerva. But notice what she says here. So they use the Bible, remove words out, and make it glorify the sorority. They rearrange biblical things around and put a deltish, worldly, false, godly twist to make it identical to the word of God, but it's not. Here's an example. I'm going to give you an example of that. This is coming from their handbooks here. Official Ritual of the Grand Chapter, page 4. Though I speak with the tongues of the learned and the profound and have no love, I am as a noisy gong or a clanging cymbal. This is basically them modifying 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verse 1. It says here, though I speak with the tongues of men and of angels and have not charity, in other words, love, I am as a sounding brass or a tingling cymbal. Notice how they made subtle changes, as she pointed out. Here's another example. And though I prophesy, know all the Delta laws, rituals, traditions, and secrets, and can recite them glibly, and though I have such absolute devotion to duty that I can do anything my hands undertake and have not love, I am nothing. Verse 2 from the same chapter. And though I have the gift of prophecy and understand all mysteries and all knowledge, and though I have all faith so that I can remove mountains and have not what? Charity, I am nothing. Here's another example. When I was a pyramid, remember what they said earlier, that they leave it up to their candidates to select their own mediums.
Yes, sir.
But notice here, they're actually giving the medium to them. That's all what? Smoke and mirrors. As you notice what I read to you, they're actually telling them what they're going to believe in. Here it is. When I was a what? Pyramid. I talked as a pyramid. I understood as a pyramid. I thought as a pyramid, but now that I have become a delta, I am done with the ways of those intending to be deltas. Well, let's go back to 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verse 11. Most of you guys already recognize this. When I was a child, I spake as a child. I understood as a child. I thought as a child. But when I became a man, I put away childish things. Right? Now, let's go back to this article here. She says here, as I read the pyramid book, right? This still could, can be, that term pyramid book can be interchangeable with Book of the Dead. But as I read the pyramid book, the founders want the sorrows to admire Minerva, mind, body, and spirit. Yes, spirit, which means we are giving her life.
Wow, she recognized.
She recognized that. That's why she came up under so many attacks, and others that are coming out are being attacked.
Yes.
Now, notice this here. This is the Omega Psi Phi fraternity. Right? Remember, these guys, if you Google it, go to YouTube and Google the Omega Psi Phi, you're going to come up with a video of them dancing and stepping with their pants hung down below their rear ends, showing their buttocks, showing their behind.
Yes,
Hundreds of them. But guess what? Let me show you something here. That wasn't done by coincidence. Look at what they say here. Whence come ye, my friends, clothed as ye be, and accompanied by these, my true and tried brothers, neophyte commandment from the outer chamber of darkness into the Shekinah light of Omega. Remember, Shekinah, that is getting into Jewish mysticism. And we're going to touch on that in a second here. But notice, from the outer chamber of darkness into the Shekinah light of Omega. So what is the Shekinah? Let me explain it to you guys again from piggybacking off of part 1. What you see here This is the lower torso of, in Jewish mysticism, they call this the 10 Sephirah. So each one of these circles here represents a part of their so-called God called the Ein Sof. In Jewish mysticism, which is based off of the Maccabee mysticism, system of mysticism, right? They call their God Ein Sof. And Ein Sof is supposed to be God before God per se. So it says when, according to Jewish mysticism, Ein Sof, right, created everything because he needed to find himself. You'll find a similar story that's similar to what you see in the Mormons when they try to explain Elohim and all of these things. But nevertheless, you see here, right, this is supposed to be the body, the diagram of their God. So now they teach here that this is the torso, like the hip area, right? But this is the reproductive organs right here, right? So let's break this down. That portion right there is called the foundation, or the yesod, which is the male reproductive organ. They call it the foundation. But now this portion right here is called the Shekinah. This is the feminine reproductive organ. So they teach that the Most High is a hermaphrodite. They also teach that Adam is a hermaphrodite. In the Talmud and the Mishnah, it teaches that Adam was a bisexual. So you see here, foundation, yesod. If you see their actual diagram, they also have the Hebrew word yesod. In other words, a phallus. Shekinah, the female reproductive organ. All right. So going back here, they say here, the neophyte commandment shall make the following statement. Friend, the Apostle Paul said to the young man he was training, Timothy, endure hardness as a good soldier. Notice how they sprinkle a little scriptures over it.
Yes,
and if
sir.
you grew up in the church, you'll think that they're teaching Christianity per se, which they are not. Remember, Hasatan describes himself as what? An angel of light.
Yes, sir.
And said his messengers are doing the same thing, and they have a doctrine that they pushing.
Total deception.
So it goes on to say, then it goes on to say, this coming from there, this goes on to say, every son of Omega shall be courageous. And this is coming from their ritual book. So the Omega is also the Hinduism. In Hinduism, the symbol is called the horseshoe yoni, which is also referred to as the pearly gate. So the yoni is the representation of the female genitalia representing the Hindu goddess Shakti. And that is Shakti right there. You'll see her on what's that what is it? Like a coffee shop, Starbucks. That's where that female comes from. That is Shakti. Right? That symbol that they use.
Wow.
So that's Hinduism. So the symbol was also called the Great O, or Om, right, of Hindu temples, the Great Mother or woman, just as Phalaga was the phallus. This phallic image, is called the Ligam Yoni. Now, when you see Ligam Yoni, this is the male and the female coming together, right? Altar of India. So the genitalia focus of her divine energy, the yantra, was adorned as a geometrical symbol. The ceremony of baptismal, in other words, rebirth, often involved being drawn through a giant yoni. And notice what you see here, the drawing there, right? That yoni represents a female reproductive organ. So those who underwent this ceremony were labeled as twice born, right? So you notice here, right? These are the different forms of the yoni. That delta, that triangle, this horseshoe, the fish, right? But notice what you see and look at the position of the hands. Look at what it's forming. It's forming a female reproductive organ. Okay, so now let's deal with the Kappa Alpha Psi fraternity. It says here, this is coming from their ritual book, 1968, page 48. Chief outlaw, This is the spear of the great Delphic god Apollo, which he wiles in defense of those who worship at his shrine. Here's the Greek god Apollo. Let's see. Let's get some information on that. Let me give you some information. Who is Apollo? Here it is. Greek sun god, right? You know, you have many within the church to say that they're not worshiping the sun god, but guess what? They're part of these sororities, fraternities, and sororities. Greek sun god who took over the powers of his twin sisters, Artemis, which is the moon. Originally, he was her child, as the son was born of the moon goddess in Egypt. He was also her totemic beast in several forms of the wolf, Apollo Lacaeus, a mouse, Apollo Smithius, or a golden maned lion, Apollo Chrysocombs. It goes on to say the fully anthropomorphized, Apollo laid claim to the goddess's power of prophecy, poetry, music, magic, and healing. This is all dealing with Greek Roman mythology. His priests adopted the muses, the graces, even the great serpent who gave oracles from the earth womb, Apollo Python, known as Sol Niger. In other words, the black sun during this nightly sojourn. So make a note where it says Apollo Python. And in the underworld, Egyptians called him Apep or Apophis, in other words, the serpent of darkness. Now let's go to Revelation chapter 9 and 11, and we're going to see it right in the scriptures. Notice what we see here, Apollyon. So, and they had a king over them, which is the angel of the bottomless pit, whose name in the Hebrew tongue is Abaddon, but in the Greek tongue hath his name Apollyon. So here they are what? These fraternities are teaching you to worship the beast. Remember what we shared in part 1? The worship of Gomer?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Right? Going back here, it says here, the founders of Kappa Alpha Psi were so concerned with authenticity and uniqueness of their ritual emblems and ceremonies that they took classes in Greek mythology and Greek heraldry. But you see what they began to do, learn of the Greek culture.
Yes, sir.
In order to put their rituals and everything together.
Let me say this. Let me say this to the people. You have a lot of preachers. I've even seen some Hebrews that are still involved in this, that are pledging, and you still associated with what the enemy has. We're giving you understanding of things that people are still caught up in. You cannot preach the doctrine, or you cannot preach the oracles of the Most High and be involved in this. Period, point blank. When you take that oath to these deities, you're taking an oath to other Yahs. This is what Elohim was talking about. Our people, what? They perish for lack of knowledge. We get involved in everything because it looked good. It presents false opportunities. And this is what they're doing. They're lying to you. And one of my ox told me, he said, man, I didn't even read the handbook. He said, I think 98% of the people that pledge don't read the handbook. And this is what's in there. And you go in blindly, not knowing. And then some become aware because the opportunities get more greater. You shut up. And we got pastors in Christian churches. We even got Hebrews that are still doing this mess now. But keep going on, Doc. I just wanted to point out, y'all not of the Most High. You are not of Yah. If you're involved in this right now, the Most High is not dealing with you. He's calling you up out of this mess.
Absolutely. And this is why we have to make sure we train and properly teach our children. Because if you pay attention to, for example, the Babylonian system, right? When you look at high school, when you look at college, for the most part, even in college, 3 years, 4 years, but generally you could do it in 3 years or you could do it in 4 years, either way. But guess what? They got that from the Babylonians, right? Even in Masonry, the first 3 years or the first three steps are what? You're foundational. Then you graduate. So this system is embedded in everything we can ever imagine. If we're not careful and we don't teach this correctly, we have to make sure that we're teaching our children how to navigate through this system to what? Come out of it.
Yes.
We know our children have to be educated because we're in this land of captivity. We just cannot tell our children not to be educated. But we have to do just like how Daniel was raised up in the Babylonian system, just like the 3 Hebrew young men. And out of the 4 out of the entire community that was in this captivity, even though they was in this captivity, they made it a point to say that they're not going to what? Compromise themselves. So again, this is all Greek mythology. Notice what it says. They took classes in Greek. Still going back to the time of the Maccabees, like we discussed a little bit last week.
Yes, sir.
It goes on to say, the last figure is an uplifted arm bearing a spear, which symbolizes fidelity. The latter figure not only indicates the extent to which members will go in their fidelity to each other in cause of right, but also symbolizes the protection which the gods grant unto every loyal member of Kappa Alpha Psi.
Who grants?
Notice what it says here. You see, it says that again, they're gods.
Yes.
Notice it says the gods.
Wow.
We hear this right now. The gods. We hear that in Kemet. The gods. We hear that in 5%. The gods. You be what? God? You be God? You see, I grew up in Newark, New Jersey. That's how they ask you. They come up to you. You be God? You be God? And then you give the rundown.
Yes, sir.
If you are a part of that.
Yes.
My grandmother said, hey, just tell them you're a Baptist, right? This is when I was a kid, right? So it goes on to say, it must stress first things first and maintain a continuing realization that the only first in Kappa Alpha Psi is who? Kappa Alpha Psi itself.
Wow.
Let's go to the Kappa Alpha, the Alpha Kappa sorority, the AKA. Right? This is their pledge to thee, O Alpha Kappa Alpha. We pledge our hearts, our minds, our strength to foster their teachings, obey the laws, and make thee supreme in service to all mankind. Well, that's what they say. That's what they're pledging. But let's go to the scriptures. Let's give some scriptures. Let's go to Luke chapter 10, verse 27. And notice what it says about pledging. Because many will say, oh, there's nothing in the scripture that talks about that. Well, let's start with Luke chapter 10, verse 27. He answered, said, thou shalt love Yahweh thy Elohim with what? All thy heart. In other words, the Most High is a jealous Most High. He do not like roommates.
No, sir.
See, we began to get in this mindset of having roommates. We think the Most High wants roommates. And he answered, saying, thou shalt love Yahweh thy Elohim with all thy heart, labab, and with all thy soul, and with all thy strength, and with all thy mind, and thy neighbor as thyself. So why are these people that are teaching the scripture participating in these pledges? Let's go back here. Notice what it says again. Let me go back. It says here, and make thee supreme in service to all mankind. The previous one said the same. All of them are saying the same thing. All right, let's fast forward here. Who are the AKAs pledging to? Who are they pledging to? Well, let me answer that question. The god Atlas and the goddess Themis. Well, who are they? You guys seen this image, especially if you're up in the New York area, right? You see this image right here. So Atlas, pre-Hellenic Titan or Earth god, brother of Prometheus, condemned to carry the world on his back because he took part in the giants' revolt against the Olympian gods. This was a reinterpretation of his primary earth supporting function. And again, this is all Greek and Roman mythology. And a lot of this comes from the Egyptians. As Prometheus was associated with the Caucasus and Hercules, with the Pillars of Hercules in the west, so Atlas was associated with the Atlas Mountains of Africa, indicating that the Titans were originally divine pillars of heaven upholding the world. Atlas might be compared to the Vedic god Vishnu, right? You'll see a lot of this as well coming out of Hinduism, who took the form of a tortoise, in other words, Greek Tartarus, and supported the world on his back. The goddess Themis, right? That is an image of her. You know, the scale. You see a lot. You tend to see her when you're dealing with the law. You see her in a lot of courtrooms. The scale, the balance. You also see her prophesied in Revelation and also in Daniel and also Zechariah. I'm not getting into that in this lesson, but Themis, the pre-Hellenic creatress, cognate with the Chaldean Thamti. In other words, it means the sea or Tiamat. Her virgin aspect was Artemis. Her name was numerically equivalent to that of the moon. Notice we still dealing with the moon, right? Right. And we can even get into when you start understanding Islam. Yes, the original God that they worship was not Allah, right? Allah simply transliterates to the God. But if you go further, you'll see it was Alat, a female goddess. Her name was and it's equivalent to this right here, the moon, right? Her name was numerically equivalent to that of the moon. Her children were Themistes, in other words, oracles. She founded the Oracle of Delphi. Delphi means womb, long before it was taken over by Apollo. Black Sea Amazons worship Themis in the form of a black stone.
Islam.
They remember, you see how this tie together?
Yes, sir.
On their sacred island of Themyscira, divine Themis. The Roman foreman had an ancient black stone, the lapis niger, engraved with the goddess's sacred law. In faraway Iceland, the same goddess was adorned in the form of a stone called Spermather. In other words, refer to her as mother of prophecy, or Armather, mother of prosperity. So one of her daughters is known as Diana of Themyscira. Well, some of you guys may not realize who this is.
Apostle Paul dealt with it.
Let me show you who she is. You may be surprised of who she is. But I'm going to show you here in a second. Let's show Diana of Themyscira. Let's see her mentioned in the scriptures. Acts chapter 19, verse 34. But when they knew that he was a Judean, I don't like to use the term Jew. That's a whole nother discussion. Judean or Judah, all with one voice about the space of 2 hours cried out, "Great is Diana of the Ephesians." Now, I didn't put an original statue here because the statue you'll see today, it looks like a Caucasian woman, when actually the goddess Diana was a black woman.
Yes, sir.
Right? So
yes, sir.
It goes on to say in verse 35, it's still not trying to say it's okay to worship these gods and goddesses, but that's what they worshiped. It was a woman, a statue of a black woman with multiple breasts. Think it's a coincidence that the slave owners were using our women to breastfeed their babies?
Wow.
Especially if you start understanding the Romulus twins.
Yes, sir.
Anyway, I know I'm going a little geek mode. So
it's all right.
When we go to verse 35, it says, "And when the town clerk had appeased the people, he said, Ye men of Ephesus, what man is there that knoweth not how that the city of the Ephesians is a worshiper of the great goddess Diana and of the image which fell down from Jupiter?" Doesn't that sound like the cobblestone?
Yes, sir.
Fell down from the heavens. So
Yes, sir.
let me show you a modern image, even though this is still a modern image, but let me show you an even newer image of Diana of Themyscira. Let me show you. That's her. Wonder Woman.
Wonder Woman. Wow.
And many of our brothers and sisters allowing your children, your daughters, to dress up as Wonder Woman. Here's another image. Notice what she's standing at, standing on top of the actual image. And notice it looks just like what? The Statue of Liberty, because that's all part of that. So Leviticus and all of that. I'm not getting into all of that. But you see, look at the image here. Pushing this goddess. And guess what? This is all still ties into the worship of the Shekinah. Or the Shekinah, or some would say Shekinah. And she's Israeli. Why so many people care that Wonder Woman is Israeli? A critic for Hearts, or Haaretz, rather, noted in his review to those who would watch the film with national Israeli pride. Guys, Israeli simply means citizen, but not aboriginal to the area. Yeah. So in the forward acts, if Gadot is on her way to becoming the biggest Israeli superstar ever and a global feminist torch holder for decades to come. So they pushing the worship of Shekinah.
Yes, they are.
Right? So how to debunk the GLOs? And here we go. Let me show you how to defend this. How to debunk Freemasonry. I'm going to give you the answer with the accurate use of scripture. You have to use the scripture with accuracy. It's amazing how when you go through seminary, they teach you about hermeneutics. They teach you how to approach the text, because hermeneutics is simply a science of how you read ancient literature. So you have biblical hermeneutics, right? Many pastors have been taught this, but they're not properly using hermeneutics. They'll quote exegesis and eisegesis and all of this, but exegesis it means that you're allowing the scriptures to talk to you. You're not inserting, you're not interpolating it. Eisegete is you're interpolating the text. So with accurate use of scripture, not using what you think it should say, but knowing what the scripture actually says. You'll make a lot of people mad, but you'll keep yourself out of trouble when you actually give scripture and not your opinion. And it's too many giving opinions versus the actual word. Exactly. So let me give you actual word here. So the Hebrew Israelite Messiah gave instructions to his disciples not to pledge to man's system. Let's go to Matthew chapter 5, verse 33 and 34. Notice what it says here. Again, this means that the Most High, through his son, had this conversation with his disciples multiple times. Again, ye have heard that it hath been said by them of old time, right? Notice the Messiah is dealing with the Torah.
Yes, sir.
He says, but I say unto you, does this sound like he's destroying this law? He says, dealing with swearing, verse 33, but verse 34, he says, but I say unto you, swear not at all, neither by heaven, for it is Yahweh's throne. So you're not supposed to be swearing, saying, so help me, Yah. Put your hand on the Bible and swear. You're not supposed to do this. None of us are supposed to do this.
And they know this. That's why they do it in court.
Exactly. So we are given stern instructions not to make false vows, swear falsely, swear to a lie. So the Messiah gave another key warning to his disciples in verse 20, in the same text, verse 24 through 26. Let's go back here. It says, here, for there shall arise false messiahs, Mashiachs, and false prophets, and shall show great signs and wonders. They're going to look like they're doing all kinds of miracles.
Yes.
Don't get caught up. Part of this, a great sign to many of our people is the mega term, mega ministry. Look at how big that ministry is. Wow, that's a great sign. That's a wonder. Guess what? The Messiah only had what? 12 with him. Really, 11 that was dedicated. Because when he gave his disciples the truth, 2/3 of them walked away from him. And
Yes,
according to how things are done today, that'll be his ministry would be considered a failure. Notice what it says here. It says, if it were possible, they shall deceive the very elect. And this is dealing with Israel. This is not dealing with some church construct, because that construct church did not even exist. It was not being even used until the 4th century, outside of a group of people called the Celts. They the one that created the term church.
Wow.
So here it says, they shall deceive the very elect. Who is the elect? That's Israel. We're supposed to be the priesthood, a nation, a kingdom of priests. But notice what it says here. Behold, I have told you what? Before. Notice he's saying to his disciples, look, we keep having this conversation. You're not new to this. I have told you before. Wherefore, if they shall say unto you, behold, he, the Messiah, Mashiach, is in the desert, go not forth. Why is this important? This is isolation. You have to be careful of people trying to isolate you and using isolation as a form of salvation. You cannot isolate yourself in this country. Every piece of property the government can take from you if they want to make use of it.
Really, real talk, calm.
So we have to be careful when you have people. This is how a lot of cults start. They'll push themselves as what? A Messiah. They have a Christ complex about them. And before you know it, they're having people isolate themselves. They selling everything and giving it to them. So he's saying, wherefore, if they shall say unto you, behold, he, Mashiach, is in the desert, go not forth. Behold, he is where? In the secret chambers. Believe it not. Deceptive salvation of the secret chambers. Let's deal with this here. The Greek definition of secret chamber. It says here, a chamber on the ground floor, secret chamber, closet, storehouse, right? Think about Congress. Congress have what? Chambers, secret chambers. So the Hebrew definition of secret chambers, right? It says here, an apartment, chamber, innermost part, innermost ward, right? Innermost or inward part. So what is the secret chamber? What is the Messiah referring to? Let me show you. Ezekiel chapter 8, verse 3 through 18. Actually, the entire chapter is dealing with, you can use to completely shut down Freemasonry as well as Islam in this text. Starting with, let's deal with the great abominations. Let's start with the Oxford Dictionary definition of abomination. It says a thing that causes disgust. Let me say that again. A thing that causes disgust. So wherever you see abomination, think about this. A thing that causes disgust or hatred. So a thing that causes disgust. The etymological dictionary definition of abomination. It says abominable thing, action, feeling of, there it is again, disgust. A thing that will what? Cause disgust. Right? It goes on to say in biblical use often is something that which is ceremonial and pure. So let's go further here. Hebrew definition of abomination. It says here, something what? Disgusting. We have to make sure we remember when we see abomination, something that is disgusting, especially idolatry and idol. Unclean foods, as you see down here. Yes, disgusting. Idols. Notice what it said here. Mixed marriages.
Woo!
A lot of our brothers and sisters get upset about that part.
Yes, they do. He doesn't. He told us not to mix with the other nations.
Exactly.
He told us. Why you think Esau did what he did? He was disgusted with Esau for what he done.
Exactly, because Esau started right from the beginning entering into covenants, agreements to circumvent. So that's how Esau was kept out of what? A lot of captivities, because Esau entered into agreements to circumvent going into captivity.
Yes. Taking
Right?
their women, adopting their customs.
Exactly. So abomination, right, simply means to indulge in offensive behaviors such as unclean foods, idolatry, mixed marriages, homosexuality. Let's go to Ezekiel 8 again. Let's highlight this here. Let me explain a few more things. And he put forth the form of a hand and took me by a lock of mine head. Yes, Ezekiel had locks, right?
Yes, sir.
And the spirit lifted me up between the earth and the heaven and brought me in the vision of Elohim to Jerusalem, to the door of the inner gate that looketh toward the north, where was the seat of the image of jealousy, which provoketh to jealousy. And behold, the glory of Elohim of Israel was there, according to the vision that I saw in the plain. Then said he unto me, Son of man, lift up thine eyes now the way toward the north. So I lifted up my eyes the way toward the north, and behold, hey, pay attention, northward at the gate of the altar, this image of jealousy in the entry. He said, furthermore unto me, Son of man, seest what they do, even the great abominations that the house of Israel hear, that I should go far off my sanctuary, but I turn thee yet again, and thou shalt see greater abominations. Remember, when we see house of Israel and we see house of Judah, we're seeing what? The northern and southern kingdom.
Yes.
But it didn't stop here. These are the great abominations the house of Israel committed. Now we're dealing with what? Freemasonry, because there's 3 levels to it, right?
Yes, sir.
This is going to, for those that are in Freemasonry, you're going to see and you're going to recognize what I'm going to share with you without me having to get into all the rituals. The great abominations is only the beginning of the first level of the greater abominations. Ezekiel chapter 8 verse 7 through 9. Pay attention to this, guys that are watching. Watch this. And he brought me to the door of the court. And when I looked, behold, a hole in the wall. Now we're dealing with what? Secret chambers. He sees a hole in the wall. Then he said unto me, Son of man, dig now in the wall. And when I had digged in the wall, behold, a door, an entrance. And he said unto me, go in. And behold, the wicked abominations. In other words, the things that are what? What we just talked about. What is disgusting. Abomination? Things that are disgusting, that the wicked, disgusting things that they do here. Well, what is the wicked, disgusting things that they're doing here? Right? Let's answer that with verse 10 through 12. So I went in and saw, and behold, every form of creeping things and abominable beasts, and all the idols of the house of Israel portrayed upon the wall round about. Now they're saying we're seeing all these images on the wall. See, in the church, if you understand the early church, when they began to conquer, when you start dealing with Constantine and they start conquering the Romans, they start taking their worship places and just keeping it stood up and start what? Taking those same statues, Zeus and all of them, and start placing names of apostles and angels on them. That's why we see a lot of these images there. And even that Star of David, that's an image. All the idols of the house of Israel portrayed upon the walls round about. We still see this happening right now. These are just some of them. God's people bringing all these things in there. All right.
Yes,
but
sir.
What are the abominations? What are the wicked abominations? What are the disgusting things? Right? Let's go further here. With this start here, what is done in the dark? See, that's what we're seeing here. They doing these secret things in the dark, these secret societies, but the Most High is exposing it to his prophet. What is done in the dark? All right. Let's go to verse 11 through 12 in the same chapter. So I went in and saw, and behold, every form of creeping things and abominable beasts, and all the idols of the house of Israel portrayed upon the wall round about. Then he said unto me, Son of man, hast thou seen what the ancients, in other words, the elders, the elders, the ones that's supposed to be keeping things stable. Let's see what the elders are doing of the house of Israel, doing the dark, every man in the chamber of his imagery. Now we're dealing with here in Israel, we're dealing with both of Israel. We're dealing with the north, not just the northern, we're dealing with the southern kingdom as well. Right? Because in the very first verse, as you see up here, it says, and it came to pass in the 6th year, in the 6th month, in the 15th day of the month, as I sat in my house, and the elders of Judah sat before me, that the hand of Yahweh Elohim fell there upon me. We're dealing with not just the northern kingdom, we're dealing with Judah, we're dealing with all of Israel. Right? But look at what it says here. Then said he unto me, Son of man, hast thou seen what the ancients, the elders, those that are supposed to be setting the example? That's where judgment is going to start, with the elders, the leadership.
Yes, sir.
It was always the leadership that was leading the people into sin. Aaron could have easily stopped the people from building the goat demon.
Yes, he could have. He
was the one that led the way of building what? A goat demon. He created it. So then said he unto me, Son of man, hast thou seen what the ancients, in other words, the elders who are supposed to know better, misleading the people of the house of Israel, doing the dark, every man in the chamber of his imagery? For they say Yahweh seeth us not. Yahweh has forsaken the earth. They're saying, guess what? Yah is not paying attention to what we're doing. He's not seeing this. He don't care about what we're doing.
Wow, he looking right at.
We still see the same spirit today, right?
Yes, sir.
But it didn't stop there, because we see greater abominations. That's just the tip of the iceberg, right? Verse 13, notice what it says. He said unto me, turn thee yet again, and thou see greater disgusting things. It gets even worse that they do. Let's see that even greater disgusting things that they're doing. Let's deal with this greater abomination. Verse 14. Then he brought me to the door of the gate of Yahweh's house, which was towards the north. And behold, there sat women weeping for Tammuz. Tammuz is a type of Christ when you start understanding the Sumerians. So they are worshiping another Messiah. We see that today, right?
Yes, sir.
So who is Tammuz? Let me just give you guys a little information. Actually, we're going to get through this whole lesson. We don't even have to do a part 3. According to the various legend, Semiramis became pregnant after engaging in an adulterous affair while married to Nimrod. Around the same time, Nimrod dies of a violent and untimely death, excuse the typo, in an effort to retain power and to hide her misdeeds. Semiramis makes a very outlandish claim. And guess what? You'll see this same story among the Egyptians when you understand the story of Horus, Iris, and Osiris. Right? They teach the same story. Right? Osiris was killed, dismembered. So Isis, right, had decided to what? Grab all of his body parts, because he was cut up and dismembered by Seth, grab all his body parts, was able to retain all his body parts with the exception of the phallus. In Egyptian culture, in Egyptian mysticism or whatever, a person cannot pass to the afterlife if their body is dismembered. So what did she do? She created a golden phallus and she copulated with it. In other words, necrophilia. She's having what? Intercourse with a dead body. So how does that sound like the story of our Messiah? Don't get fooled by this foolishness that's out there. But nevertheless, you see the similarities of Semiramis, right? She publicly declares that upon Nimrod's death, he had been resurrected as the god of the sun. And as the sun god, Nimrod used his sun rays to miraculously inseminate Semiramis with a child. Same thing with Isis, right? She copulated on a dead body with a golden phallus, and she supposedly got pregnant by it and had Horus. And she also didn't just have Horus as well. She had another, I'm not getting into all of that, but nevertheless, we still see that that's all what? Mysticism. This child was thus considered to be divinely conceived. The child name was Tammuz, which she claimed, which was the reincarnated Nimrod. So Tammuz was a type of Messiah, a type of Christ. So the women were weeping for Tammuz. Guess what? Weeping for what? An anti-Messiah. Let me show you something. Let me show you a sample of the commemoration of Tammuz. Let me show you something here that's going to surprise some of you guys. Right? Look at this. Right? This is a Jewish website. According to the Sefer Yetzirah, to each month of the Jewish calendar, there corresponds a letter of the Hebrew alphabets, a zodiac sign dealing with the stars, one of the 12 tribes of Israel, a sense of a controlling limb of the body. On the biblical calendar, the fourth month of the year, counting from Nisan, is called Tammuz in Jewish tradition. The name Tammuz is of Sumerian origin, as are the other names of the months of the Jewish calendar. See, guys, if you really pay attention to Torah, Moses never named and had a name for any of the months. Never. When you see Abib is just simply like saying the spring, the season. Abib is a season, not a month. He always said the first month, the second month, the fourth month, even in the days of the week, the first day, the fourth day. He always used numbers, not get into numerology, but he never used these names. So Tammuz is of Sumerian origin, as we highlighted, right? But here's another site, Rosh Chodesh, right? Or Chodesh. Tammuz is the fourth of the 12 months of the Jewish calendar. The month of Tammuz begins the season of the summer. The 3 months of this season are Tammuz, Av, Elul. And you notice this is what? It says a monthly holiday for who? Women. Women what? Weeping for Tammuz.
Yes.
The 17th day of Tammuz, a fast day. When did this come from? It says that commemorates the day when the walls of Jerusalem were breached by the Romans in 69 CE or 70 AD, marks the beginning of a period known as the 3 weeks. This is an annual mourning period. You see this craziness here? The Most High didn't create this. They created this. Here's more, just so that way I give you 3 witnesses. Tammuz is the Babylonian name of this month, as are all of the official names of the month in the Hebrew calendar. In the Bible, however, the 4th month is referred to as the 4th month with reference to Nisan, the 1st month. All right. So just giving you some insight. I have more I could share, but I'm not going to go too far with this. I kind of kept it short. But you see, still, Tammuz, the very thing that the Most High showed Ezekiel, look at here, the worship of Tammuz, fasting in the season of who? Tammuz. And I just I proved it to you guys that there is what? Still the worship of Tammuz, like we talked about, of many of our brothers and sisters are being brought into what? Jewish mysticism. It's all around us. All right. We get closer to the end here. All right, let's just a couple more slides here, I believe. All right. The third level of the greater abominations. Now we're going to go even further with the disgusting things. Verse 15 and 16. Look at what this says. Then said he unto me, thou hast seen this, O son of man. Turn thee what? Yet again. And thou shalt see what? Even greater abomination, disgusting things than these. You see the women worship weeping for Tammuz. That is disgusting. But let me show you something that's even worse. And he brought me into the inner court of Yahweh's house, and behold, at the door of the temple of Yahweh, between the porch and the altar, were about 25 men with their backs towards the temple of Yahweh and their faces towards the east. And they worship the sun towards the east. Brothers and sisters, don't get caught up in the foolishness of people telling you you have to pray facing the east. That's not biblical. We pray for Jerusalem, face Jerusalem. But guess what? If you're in the northern portion of this world, how are you going to face the east? If you're in the southern portion of this world, how are you going to face the east?
Wow.
These are all kinds of deceptive things that our brothers and sisters are incorporating.
Yes, sir.
So we have to come out of, and as you can see, it's hard to get out of the system of Judaism because Judaism is in what? These secret societies.
Yes, it is. Deep rooted.
When you learn in the language, you get into, they're going to teach you Judaism. When you learn in this Israeli language, which they call, which is called modern Hebrew, and they disguise it by saying it's biblical Hebrew. That's a whole nother discussion.
Yes, sir.
So we have it all around us. So he brought me into the inner court. This is still in the secret chambers that Yahushua mentions, right? Of Yahweh's house. And behold, at the door of the temple between the porch and the altar, the porch, this is where they go to do their prayers. Remember, Yahushua said, these guys have made the my house of prayer into a den of thieves.
Yes.
When Peter and I think it was Barnabas or one of them that was going into the temple, and the man was like asking, hey, can you help me? Who is crippled, asking for silver and gold. They was going into what? This portion of the temple to pray and sacrifice. So here it is, disgusting things in this sacred area. Were about 25 men with their backs towards the temple of Yah. In other words, turning their backs on Yah and their faces towards the east, and they worship the sun towards the east. In other words, they turned their backs towards the temple of Yahweh. This symbolizes their rejection of the Most High and their worship of what? Those deities, the worship of the gods and goddesses that they've been worshiping. But this goes even further. Let me show you. Verse 17 and 18. We're wrapping up now. Then he said unto me, hast thou seen, O son of man? Come on, Judah. We dealt with Israel early on. Look at what Judah is doing. This has the same connotation as we're reading in Malachi. Matter of fact, the entire book of Malachi is dealing with the Levitical priests in Judah. The house of Judah represents the Benjamites, Judah the tribe, as well as the Levitical priests. Then he said unto me, hast thou seen this, O son of man? Is it a light thing to the house of who? Judah, that they commit the abomination. In other words, these disgusting things which they commit here. For they have filled the land with violence. Aren't we seeing a lot of violence among our own brothers and sisters, Judah?
Yes, sir.
And have returned to provoke me to anger. And lo, they put the branch to their nose. Well, what does that mean, Pastor? I'm going to share this with you guys that are watching for the first time. Therefore will I also deal in fury. Mine eyes shall not spare, neither will I have pity. And though they cry in mine ears with a loud voice, yet will I not hear them. But notice this, the branch to their nose is referring to phallic worship. Judah was practicing homosexuality inside the temple, in the most sacred spot of the temple, where the prayers and sacrifices are offered.
Wow.
Stick to their nose. That is a phallic. That's why he said this is what even greater abominations than the women weeping for Tammuz. Now you got the men practicing homosexuality inside the temple. They doing all kinds of things inside the temple. There's a lot of preachers that's doing things in the back of their churches and their pastoral offices. Many of them having sex, homosexuality, running women, drinking, smoking, playing cards, doing all kinds of things before and after service. You'd be surprised what they're doing up in that pastoral study. You'd be surprised when you see many of your pastors going off to these trips that the church is paying for, and they sending their armor bearer, right? Which is nothing more than what? Their play toy.
That's it. Eddie Long.
Sending, that's all it is for many of them. Right? So
yes,
Israel, Judah is practicing homosexuality. And there you have it. I know I went a little longer, but I was like, since I'm here, I might as well finish this up right here.
So we thank you, Dr. Kelly, man. And I ask y'all to please listen, go and help our out. Please go and help Dr. Kelly and donate to his ministry. Please go and donate to his ministry. Go on Cash App and donate to Dr. Kelly. We put the link down there. Please go and support them. Like he said, these books, this info costs money. It costs literal money, thousands of dollars. And we want to bring more info to you. Let's be a blessing to him and sow into him and help him build, because there are other things the Most High want to show us. We're telling you this to bring you out, not for you to go in and continue on in what you're into. Please don't be deceived.
Absolutely. Well, I really appreciated Ak for having me on, and I appreciate everyone that have taken the time out of your schedules to view this presentation. And I just encourage you guys, use it as a tool to grow, not to use it as a tool to bash one another. We're supposed to do everything in love. And this presentation is, even though I'm a little fiery when I give my word, but
yes,
it's out of love, because I have a desire for our people to get out of these strong grips of deception and delusion that is really hurting us. So let's not take this information and use it for your own agendas. The agenda that we're supposed to be in unison with is what helping our people get out, helping our people get free, introducing them to the Holy Spirit, introducing them to the truth of what our Messiah is coming to do, to restore, to repair, to defend, so again, let's make sure we take this information and use it the right way, not using it to, again, further push whatever agendas that are out there, but to show our brothers and sisters that there is a right way, and this is the right way. Make sure that your behavior is right in alignment with the Spirit of the Most High when doing so.
Hallelujah. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in on Hebraic Faith TV. You can go follow Dr. Kelly at We Woke Now on YouTube. Please subscribe to his channel, like, comment, subscribe. He has great teachings, just great discipline with the word, and he's a great man in our eyes, and we want to keep him in prayer. Please pray for him, because we know the enemy would love to stop this, but the prayers of the righteous availeth much. The fervent, effectual prayers. Pray for us. Pray for our health. Pray for our family. Pray for our finances, that we can continue to do what we need to do and move the kingdom as it needs to. And we thank you right now. Thank you for everyone tuning in. Please like, comment, subscribe to the Hebraic Faith TV. Share this with everyone. We thank you.